Okay. All you gotta do is when this program ends, just come and click end broadcast.
Okay.
That's all. Okay.
Is the
That's all.
door still open?
I'll leave the door open.
Okay.
Talal Miyan sir, sir, मैंने कर दिया, मैं इधर ही हूँ यहाँ से. Actually ऐसा की नमाज हो रही थी जब when you call, but everything is under control. Alhamdulillah. 6:15 था, but that's okay. Alhamdulillah. Here, I think I just clicked live, so I think it should be fine. Okay, let me see on the Facebook live as well. आ गया यहाँ से भाई, Facebook पे भी आ रहा है. Yeah. हाँ लोग आए हैं माशाल्लाह से, काफी लोग आए हैं. हाँ काफी लोग एक्चुअली. I would say मर्दाना almost और तुम भी बहुत काफी लोग हैं माशाल्लाह से. Yeah. मैंने कर दिया यहाँ से. आने से पहले I was here 5:45, did everything. Stable setup, mic, everything is done. Alhamdulillah. अच्छा यासिर भाई, quick question. ये आपका Facebook जो है ना account, how do I because this brother Talal was asking if we have access to that way we can kind of show them, because right now हो क्या रहा है, ये projector में on करने की कोशिश करता हूँ इस area पे, and I'll try to put it up here. If not, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal again. Projector तो मैं जो आता है on करना, I know how to do that, but I'm trying to see if I can live stream that. But you know what? It's not a big deal. He's saying it's not a big deal. He is actually, yes. Basically वो उनको बता रहे हैं कि मुझे लिंक डालना है, etc. तो मैंने जी 10.1.10.82. Okay. Okay, I'm here. Yes. 3 पे है वो. बॉटम बॉक्स मतलब अच्छा ऑन. अभी मैं प्रोजेक्टर कोशिश कर रहा हूँ ऑन करने की. दैट्स हाँ 10.1.10.251. yes. Tell them it's great. Everything is Let me see one second. How are you, brother? हाँ आलिया आया. प्रोजेक्टर ऑन नहीं ऑन है अभी वो रिंग अप हो रहा है. It's trying to come on. नहीं मगर I think प्रोजेक्टर की जरूरत नहीं है ऐसे भाई. From what ऑन करके तो इंस्टा क्लास को ओपन नहीं होगा तो क्या 251 खुला नहीं खुल रहा है. It's taking forever. Okay, so प्रोजेक्टर का जो वो है ना क्या कहते हैं रिमोट है उसमें ऑप्टिमल लिखा होगा. Just take it right underneath the projector and turn it on there. Okay. और उसके बाद if you want to show anything from the computer screen on the projector, what you do is you drag that browser over to what shows up on the screen on the wall. Understood. समझ गया. Yeah, so then that should show up. मगर projector के remote लेके just like turn it on. I gotcha. तो वो हमारा आलियान कर रहा है. Okay. कितने लोग हैं ऑनलाइन? ऑनलाइन 13 लोग हैं यहाँ से भाई. That's nice. I think it's more than 100 people at least for sure. Yeah. Okay. एक लोग के लिए specifically they needed access to projector and live stream. So live stream don't get projector. Just want to make sure that's working. Okay. I think Aliana he just. मैं आपको करता हूँ यहाँ से भाई. I think I got everything under control. Inshallah, if I need anything, I'll let you know. Thank you so much. Alright. Assalamualaikum. Remote
should be powered.
It's. Give it a minute. You have to hold it there.
No, it's not. Just you know the source?
I did that. ओह सॉरी क्या सही परफेक्ट टाइम पे आंसर मुझे ये स्क्रीन उधर डालना है सर ये अच्छा फाइनल यार
That's a very good question. Okay, and that is नीचे की
वन पे तो नहीं होगा आई थिंक
वन पे कैमरा ठीक है अभी टू पे करो
2 पे नहीं आ रहा है 3 पे जैसे वो है आपका
टू पे क्यों नहीं आ रहा लैपटॉप पर हो जाए क्या बात
नहीं मैं इधर से कर रहा हूँ सर तो आई एम जस्ट शेयरिंग द
Should I go check the source on it? Like,
उसको HDMI हाँ चेंज कर दे कुछ नहीं चेंज कर लेकिन HDMI 1 ही आना चाहिए देखो नहीं ऐसे तो आता हो इधर नहीं आ रहा अच्छा लॉग एक मिनट पीछे
इसको ये कर क्या रहा है अच्छा जैसे हाँ बताएं
नहीं इसको मिनिमाइज करो ओके मिनिमाइज करो इसको राइट क्लिक करो उसकी स्क्रीन पे डिस्प्ले सेटिंग पे आइडेंटिफाई करो
वन
है सही
हाँ देर यू गो आ गया
we change हुई क्योंकि हमने उस क्या नाम है अपने वेबसाइट पे किया
got it thank you sir.
HDMI 2 है
no, I've got HDMI 1.
That's right. अब ये वाला है Anjan are you here are you what's going on you gonna attend that event
No, I won't.
you gotta be so that it's a I mean that's where you go
regarding गिनना
For
चाहते
sure not going to any Ivy League. So.
come on man you why you underestimate yourself man
It's not underestimating, it's realistic.
ये माशाल्लाह से 20
It's realistic.
हो जाएगा यार 26 the 100 के पर 150 के पर
देखो मेरी बात सुन मेरे भाई की बेटी छोटी वो उसके
he
सैलरी
said we
80
can do it live stream
okay
how do you
yeah you we supposed to
Yeah, you-
already it's already live stream हो रहा है
so what he saying we can hear
they cannot hear
let's see here the speakers
yeah करके देखो
1 hour early to the high school to practice for orchestra. And then they would bus me back to my middle school for the normal day to begin. So for 3 years, I was doing more than a full day of school just because I was interested in playing in orchestra. That was an extracurricular that I had started and I was sticking with. Throughout high school, we had a big school. Big school means our football team was one of the best in the state. Our basketball team was also really good. I had no chance of being in sports at that level. No chance. So what I did, though, from an extracurricular perspective, is I stuck with orchestra. I was the top of the cello section, first chair, as it is. I stuck with Spanish language all 4 years of high school, to the end where I got to AP Spanish and I got college level credit. I was very involved at my masjid. Not sure if you can tell, but my Islam is a part of my identity that's important. And at the masjid, we had a youth group, Young Muslim Faith in Action. We would organize dinners and raise money for refugees and do other nice things in the community. We would organize a camp and all the normal stuff. So I was involved there. We also started an MSA at our high school. I was one of the founders of that MSA. We would rotate and do Jummah khutbah amongst ourselves, stuff like that. So those were extracurriculars that I stuck with through 4 years. Orchestra was something I stuck with. Spanish language was something I stuck with. And starting at age 15, I got a part-time job outside of school as well. So I worked at Wendy's frying French fries. And I tell you, $5.15 an hour is not worth the pain of hot oil coming at you. But it was a thing that I did, and it's an experience I carry with me as I value every dollar that we spent. I worked at Wendy's. I worked at a video rental place, which is like Netflix 25 years ago. I worked at CVS. I did 1 hour photo, which is what we used to have before digital photos. And I sold blinds and wallpaper on the internet at a company nearby. So I always maintained this part-time job. That gave me exposure to very different people as well, which is really important. So all of these things were a part of who I was, right? The masjid activities, these few extracurriculars. There were other extracurriculars as well that I stuck with. I was involved in Model UN, and I often won Best Delegate. So these were things that I stuck to consistently, which they saw on the application. There were a few other things as well. I went to a camp where they selected one student from our high school to go. This camp was called Boys State. You spend a week at the college campus. The college campus was Michigan State University in our capital. And the American Legion, which is a group of veterans, they sponsor this camp where we operate a model government, 3 different branches of government, state, local, etc. And that was a fantastic experience. All throughout, I got lots of letters of recommendation. I had teachers who came up to me in the hallway during my senior year, and they said to me, my chemistry teacher specifically came to me, and she said, "Omar, I hear that you asked Miss So-and-so for a letter of recommendation, but you didn't come and ask me. Why didn't you ask me for a recommendation?" I was like, I'm sorry, Miss McGrath. I didn't want to bother you. And she's like, "No, it's no bother at all." So she offered to write one. At the end, I had a stack of like 11 letters of recommendation from many different voices, from different perspectives, all supporting me as an applicant. And usually a college application asks you to give maybe 2 recommendations, maybe 1. I went ahead and sent all 11 to every school I applied to. Just extra, I even went above and beyond. There was a state senator who I was connected to. This state senator would lead our orchestra once a year. And I met him when I was at the Capitol. I asked the people from his office if I could get a letter of recommendation from him. They went to him and spoke to him, and he said, "Yes, I will do it for one school. Which school would you like?" I said I would pick Harvard if you could please send a letter to them. So that was sent. So that's letters, recommendation, extracurriculars, academics, straight A throughout. The last thing I would mention is my essay. So I had an essay that I wrote just from my own inspiration. It was a very sincere reflection of myself. I had woken up one morning with just this idea in my mind. I viewed it as inspiration from Allah, my subconscious, I don't know. But I started typing that morning and it all just came out. I wrote about a visit to Pakistan in my 11th grade summer. During this visit, I was a young Muslim who grew up in the US who felt that I should be visiting a Muslim country now for the first time as a young man, and I should see so many nice things. And stepping out of the airport, instead of seeing the minaret that I imagined, I saw the golden arches of McDonald's at Karachi Airport. This was just the first of many contradictions and disappointments that I felt during that trip that I wrote about. And one of the main messages I wrote about was that my visit and my perceptions were very much framed by the knowledge I had gained in high school. And I closed by sharing that I look forward to revisiting Pakistan with the knowledge that I gained in college and the perspective that I gained. And, you know, alhamdulillah, if I think about my life now as someone in their late 30s, I have done all of that. I worked in Pakistan, and it was very much framed by the things I learned in college. So this, I think, tells you quite a bit about me as an applicant, the academic excellence, extracurricular commitment, the resounding recommendations from teachers and people in the community, and then a personal statement that was truly personal. So that's, I think, where I would hand off to Myra, unless, Talal, you think I missed anything at this point.
Oh, this was great. I wonder how anyone else will handle this now.
No, I mean, they each have their own stories.
Absolutely. So just a few quick reflections. I think 4 things that I picked up from Omar. Thank you for the very, very detailed and intimate account that are relevant for students applying to college, but also those of us who are beyond college, which I thought are relevant to whatever we do today. One is having the determination and drive to be the absolute best at what we're doing. And this is also very linked with what Islam teaches us in the form of ikhlas. Right? So, being the best in your cohort is not something that ends at college. We all are engaged in civic, professional, educational activities, and we can all aspire to that. 2, having the wisdom and humility to realize and recognize what won't be sources of distinctiveness for you, even though they may be shiny, great objects that attract a lot of glamour and fandom. Those may not be what I'm great at, and having the wisdom to say, I will go pursue something. 3, then, for what I've chosen to pursue, having the persistence to take it through multiple years, and having the energy to start it well before high school. Again, we can all draw parallels around assignments that we're taking on in our jobs, in our civic local community, and our attitude towards them and the level of energy that we give them, and learn from them. And number 4, I forgot, so we come back to it. Please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Myra Siddiqui. I grew up very close to here. I went to Dulles High School. I went to UPenn for undergrad. I studied international relations, and then I went to Harvard Law School afterwards. So I know the scope of the panel is college admissions, but if anyone is young and interested in law, reach out to me afterwards. I'd be happy to talk about it. So unlike Omar, I don't remember winning any first grade awards. So if you're worried that you're behind, you're not. I did a couple of things like spelling bee, science fair here and there, but it's okay to not start quite so young, I think. I did really enjoy school from a young age, though. Just kind of a nerd. I even loved Sunday school. So, I loved reading and math and social studies. And so in all my classes, my parents can tell you, I would stress everyone out because I wanted to do really well and get all A's in all of my classes. So I would say from maybe middle school is when I started to get really serious, and, you know, try to never make a B in any of my classes. That was always the goal. And, you know, I didn't even take gifted and talented classes or anything like that. I really just focused on whatever classes I was in, doing the best I could and making A's in all of them. And then I did not make any B's. I came close, but I did not. And if you make a B, I think it's okay. Just try your best. But, you know, in high school is when I really started to get a lot more serious about these things. And so luckily I had an older sister who gave me kind of a roadmap of boxes to check. And then I filled them in, similar to Umar, with things that I really enjoyed. And, you know, I do hope that's a takeaway is we're going to give you a lot of advice today, but ultimately do what you really enjoy, because you're going to do a really good job at something that you actually like doing. So, you know, in terms of classes, I think early in high school, Sure, yeah, I'll go into them. So just to talk about academics quickly, so there's, because I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with courses in high school, how that works. So there's AP is advanced placement classes. Those are the more advanced classes that you can eventually at the end of the school year take an exam and get college credit. If you're applying to Ivy League schools, they expect you to have a lot of AP classes on your, you know, on your transcript. And so those classes tend to be very challenging. Early in high school, I think usually the first 2 years, you only have pre-AP classes offered, and then AP classes are typically 11th and 12th grade. So I would definitely recommend taking pre-AP classes. They're more challenging, more rigorous, so you can get used to studying really hard. And then, of course, you know, then later on taking AP classes as well and taking the advanced placement exam at the end of the year. In terms of extracurriculars, I did track and cross country. I was told that I had to play a sport if I wanted to get into an Ivy League school. So I joined track in 8th grade and I ran the 4x4 relay, which, if you know what that is, it's 4 different people run 1 lap each. I was so bad that if you know what a track looks like a straight is 100 meters. That's a quarter of a track. I would finish a quarter of a track behind other people. So I was really bad. And I would go home and think, I'm so bad at this. There's no way I'm going to get into a good school because I'm going to have to drop out of track. And that's the end of my high school career. So suffice it to say, I did not drop out. The shame of doing so bad my first year made me train so hard that my freshman year, the next year, I was actually varsity cross country. So I only share that because if you try something and you're really bad at it, it's not the end of the world. You can honestly try something else, or you can stick with it and still do really well and things will work out. That's why I want everyone to know that. Another thing I did was I've always really liked volunteering and interacting with people. And so at Dulles, there were a couple of clubs that did that. One was called Interact. And so it was just an organization that did all different types of volunteering projects. Typically, you want to join a few different clubs, and it's really good if you can become an officer. So just kind of planning ahead, you know, I joined my freshman year and then ran for office sophomore year. And so I forget now what position I had, but I joined that club. I was also in student council. I was class president. And I just want to say that I'm a shy person. I'm okay now, but in high school I was very shy. So the idea that I was class president is laughable. And I share that because if you think like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can get elected, that's not true. You just have to run. You never know. And if you don't get it, you can just run for something else your sophomore year. You know, a lot of this stuff, it sounds really impressive after the fact, but at the time, I didn't know that I could actually do any of these things, you know? So definitely, if the only reason you think you can't do something is you're scared, just do it. Just try it and you can do something else if it doesn't work out. I'm trying to think. Those were the main things I did. And then I also volunteered independently. There was a tutoring center close to me that basically had like a sort of like an experimental, interesting way of teaching kids how to read. And I love reading and I like working with children a lot. And so I used to go there once a week. And, you know, going somewhere weekly, having some kind of consistent commitment is really good because it, you know, it shows that you are really passionate, you're disciplined, you can stick to things. That looks good as well. And then I think later on we'll talk a little bit more about application essays, but briefly, so my application essay was about an embarrassing moment because I was class president for 3 years, freshman year through junior year. So that's 9th through 11th grade. And then for senior year, I ran for student body president and I lost. which is embarrassing because honestly, it's usually the person who is class president wins student body president. And so my whole essay was basically about, it started off with how, I was so embarrassed and I was very upset, but instead I spent my senior year doing a lot of other things, because for a lot of people, senior year is just a continuation. It's like the fourth year, you're just doing what you've done the previous 3 years. Instead, for me, I was able to join new organizations and be involved with new people and just do a lot of other things. And so, it was kind of an essay about how when things don't work out and they're not what you expect, you can still get a lot out of it. And, that's also goes to show that you don't have to just brag about yourself, and you should always self-promote. But, if you have points of weakness or something that you think you've grown from, you can definitely mention that in your application. And I think it shows that you're being very genuine, and that's something that I think the admission officers like to see. And I don't know if there's anything else, so that's all from me.
I think that's it. Maybe one question: how did you get track?
So I was told I had to play a sport. I don't have hand-eye coordination, but I was always pretty good at running in PE class. And so I tried track, and honestly what happened was there's a lot of different events. So you can do short distance running or long distance running. My first year I tried short distance sprinting and was terrible at it. Like truly some of the most embarrassing moments of my life were those track meets where I was 100 meters behind everyone else. And then the next year I did long distance running and turned out to be really good at it. So, if there's something in PE, because you usually have different units where you play all the different sports, you can try out that team and see if you like it.
Thank you. So in Myra's story, clearly there is this lesson of persistence. I was reading, anything that's worth doing is worth doing badly. And so it feels like you start off, if you persist, and things turn out nicely.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Asad Bayar. I just graduated from Harvard College last year, so it's almost been a year now. It went by pretty quickly, just like high school did, but happy to talk to you all about my experience. So my upbringing was a little bit different than most people, I think.
Sorry, Asad, just one sound check. Our voice is still clear, audio is still okay, folks can understand us.
Okay, perfect. So I moved around a lot growing up because of my dad's job. I moved to America when I was 6 years old. I'm originally Turkish, hence my name. And I lived in 12 cities before I turned 12 years old. And so in high school, I went to school in ninth grade. I was at Harmony, the one that's Harmony Science Academy. And in 10th grade, I moved to another school, Harmony School of Science, Sugarland, and that's where I graduated from. So that transition was something that was actually very important for my college applications and also my high school upbringing. So I remember I didn't really know much about high school or college, and I didn't know if I would be going when I was in middle school. I didn't know how college process worked. I'm the oldest sibling, so I didn't have anyone I can ask. And my parents also didn't go to college in America. So for me, it was just a little bit of being competitive with myself. In ninth grade, I remember I had just moved to a new city, Houston, from Lubbock. And so that was a huge transition for me. So ninth grade, I wasn't really focused on how do I stand out to colleges, because I didn't really know if I would even go to college. I didn't know how colleges worked. I thought that, okay, that's just something later on. But what I did know was that whenever that later on comes along, I wanted to be able to tell anyone proudly that I did my best. No matter where I was working, where I was, learning, growing up, wherever, I wanted to do my best. So regardless of whether you go to a big school like Omar, or if you go to a smaller school, my graduating class had only about 100 people, you will be evaluated based on how much effort you put in. And so, when we talk about like recommendation letters and interviews and, the essay, that's when you actually show them the human side of you and all the effort that you put in, and along with your extracurriculars. So for me, I wasn't really thinking about extracurriculars as like another line in my resume. I was just curious about things. So ninth grade, I just played soccer. In fact, I got injured halfway through the season. So the one thing that I had going for me also kind of just went away. And then in 10th grade, when I went to my new school, I was very shy. But what I did know was that I had a really good group of friends. And when I say really good group of friends, I mean friends who pushed me to do things that they knew were good. So I also became student class president whenever I was in 11th grade. And the way that started was in 10th grade, they were going around classrooms asking who wanted to try to be a representative, a basic class representative. And I didn't want to do it because I was new and I didn't really know anyone. But then one of my friends raised his hand and he was like, SOut wants to do it. I was like, all right, I guess I got to do it now. So I had to like campaign and get the win. And throughout, those are kind of like, aside from the academic things, just like, what everyone has been saying so far with academics, you really need to set the standard for yourself that anything below 90 is unacceptable. And that has to come from within. And that's not to say that I've always had that myself, because failures are just a part of life. For example, I remember in in elementary school, maybe middle school, I got a 78 in a class with Miss Bramble in biology. And I will always remember her. I got a 78. My parents were not happy. And I was just thinking, am I happy with this? And the answer was no, because I know what I'm capable of. And you all know what you're capable of. So just know that if you get a result that you're not happy with, remind yourself what you're made of. Remind yourself that you can always do better. Because at the end of the day, college or not, it's going to be you going to bed. It's going to be you asking yourself at the end of the day, am I proud of myself? So that's to say, no matter what happens, bad grades or not, always do your best, because I promise you, the kinds of people you meet at Harvard, a lot of them are very, very good, but a lot of them also have very interesting stories. So, but the one thing that they have in common, all of them, is that they all worked very hard. They all tried their best no matter what they did. So kind of going along my story here, 10th grade, I somehow ended up in student body. I came back from my injury, so I was playing soccer. And I was also taking 2 AP classes because that's what was offered for 10th graders. We had GT programs and stuff, but I didn't know anything about them, so I didn't really take them. I was just kind of like, okay, my counselor says take AP classes, let me take AP classes. So 11th grade, that's when things really kicked off for me. That's when I was like, you know what? School is actually what I want to really focus on. Like, I want to be good at something. What can I be good at? Well, I'm in school for 5 days a week. Let me just do my best in that. So that year, I think, was kind of my breakout year. I was a student council president, so not just a representative. I became the president of the high school. And again, I did not think I was going to get that. There were 4 people running. 3 of them were seniors, and they were all so popular. Nobody knew me. I was in 10th grade, just that's hot. So 4 of us ran, but the cool thing is those 3 guys split all the votes from the seniors. So the freshmen, sophomore, and juniors voted for me. So I somehow ended up winning. So all that's to say is sometimes things work out in your favor, and it's up to Allah. But along with that, I don't want to make it sound like it was all entirely luck, because those things, like, I had to take the initiative to actually run for presidency, right? A lot of my friends were like, you're not going to get it. What's the point? It's like, well, maybe I do get it. You never know. Just like with Harvard, so many of my high schooler friends, they didn't apply, not because, like, I thought that they could get in. They were just like, I don't think I can get in. So my advice to you is Harvard looks for leaders, right? And good leaders are people who take initiative. They want to improve the status quo always. So if you see something in your school that you think can be improved, you can be that difference. Whether it's for college or not, you can be proud of yourself for saying, hey, I actually improved my school, my community, whatever it is. So I kind of saw that in my high school. It was a very small school, so we didn't have Model UN. So I made sure to work with some friends, get Model UN running. Liberal Arts Society was not a thing, so I also started that. And I was also playing soccer. And junior year, I took 6 AP classes, and it was very rough. In fact, I still have eye bags from sleepless nights from those days, but I liked it, and I was strategic with the classes I chose. I chose 6 classes out of 15 that were offered, and I looked at the teacher, I looked at whether I was actually interested, and I made a spreadsheet. Here's the teacher, here's how nice they are, here's how many hours of work I expect to do, here's my friends who are taking it, and I took all the ones that seemed the coolest and the ones that I thought would make me stand out the most. And along with that, I think, outside of school activities are also important. So like some of my friends, they played soccer for clubs rather than for high school. That's perfectly valid. One thing that I think really made me stand out And one thing about Harvard is that they like global minded people. They like people who think beyond their communities. They don't want you to just look to your right and your left and say, oh, I'm better than them, I'm good. No, they want you to look everywhere and say, how can I become the best out of every possible person? So how can I become the best version of myself? So for me, that came into fruition through a humanitarian project. Me and my friends, we were, I think it was like sophomore year. We wanted to do something school, it's like boring. We wanted to distract ourselves with something productive. So we started a fundraiser for Haiti, orphanages in Haiti, and the amount of support we got was insane. We went to masjids, did car washes, bake sales, and we raised thousands of dollars, and we ended up going to Haiti. And because of this project, because of my teachers constantly telling me that you're clearly working hard, they nominated me for an award, the Turkish American Leader Award, which I was lucky enough to win. And they sent me to Washington, D.C. And I was just doing a tour in the Capitol, and I saw a representative from Texas, and I just walked in there. Like, I left everyone who was doing the tour. I walked in there, and I just said, hey, you guys looking for interns? And he kind of looked at me, and he was like, maybe. So he was like, here's my card. So I emailed him, and I gave a better introduction. I sent him a little resume, and I was able to get an internship my junior summer. Now, one thing that maybe you're familiar with, maybe you're not, Myra explained the APs, but dual credits are also something worth knowing. Dual credits are essentially classes that you take directly from a community college, so like Lone Star or HCC, and you can take them during your academic year, or you can take them in the summer. So my junior summer was probably my busiest. I took 2 college classes, and I also had an internship at the Capitol with the representative. But I also knew that I wanted to do more. I just had, all those things were interesting, but I was so curious about learning about things. And also just the fact that I didn't know anyone who had done these things. I was like, okay, well, I can't really mess up, right? Because no one's going to compare me to anyone. So I was lucky enough to also get an internship with a judge in Houston, and I also worked for a legal aid clinic. And so you might be thinking, well, how did that happen? Well, I took initiative. I reached out to people. I emailed them. I mean, Omar will tell you, I emailed him to meet with him after too. We had like an iftar. It's about wanting to improve yourself, and it's about wanting to improve your community, and constantly just reaching out to people. People want to help. So, one of the most endless things I think in this world is human kindness. And once someone sees that you share values, that you are a good person and you want to help around, people are willing to help you. So, with that being said, if I can help you in any way, please feel free to come to me. I would love to. I've been talking for a minute now, so I'm just going to add one last thing. I guess maybe I can mention this when we talk about college itself, but the way that you can really stand out when you apply to colleges is through your GPA, right? So if you get all A's, you get a 4.0. But here's the thing, if you take college classes, those can actually boost your GPA beyond a 4.0. So my high school GPA was higher than 4, even though it literally only goes to 4. And the only reason for that is because I took APs and I got A's in them, and I also took dual credits. There's the AP exam. If you want to go to school in Texas, then you want to do well on those. Dual credits, they count for in-state credit for when you're in college as well. So take these things. It gives you optionality, and it makes your GPA look good.
So thank you for sharing. I love the spirit of being proactive and going out and speaking to more people, even though you're describing yourself as a shy person. So maybe on that line, because I always pick between mine and your story, for those of us who are shy and introverts, how do you overcome that? And how do you go talk to people you don't know and ask for votes when you're running for public office, or ask for money when you're fundraising, or ask for an internship, anything of that sort, ask for help in reviewing your essay?
The worst they can say is no, honestly. I mean, we know when I ran for class president, I mean, the worst thing that would happen is I didn't get it and I just joined something else. So, I think with anything, it's scary the first time you do it. So it feels awkward, for when you're running for officer of student council or any other club, you have to ask people to vote for you. You go and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm running. I really hope you'll vote for me. Here's what I'm hoping to do with the organization. But the scariest time is the first time. And, no one yells at you or tells you to go away. They just kind of listen and say, okay, thanks. And then you realize it's fine. And so, you just have to keep trying. And to be perfectly honest, if you're reaching out to a stranger, if it goes really badly, you'll just never talk to them again. It's okay. If you ask someone for an internship and they say no, you will never see them ever again. No one will know that you had that private embarrassment on the side. So just go out and try these things. And it really does get easier the more and more that you reach out to people. Nowadays, you can email people, so you don't even have to see their face if they reject you, which is really nice. And I can say that when I went to college, I think it was easier for me because I went to school out of state, so I didn't have any high school friends or anyone I knew. It was a lot easier to make friends because I was used to just going and talking to people. And honestly, most people are really nice. You'd be surprised. I mean, they're willing to listen to you for at least a minute or two a lot of times. And every so often you'll meet someone who's nice enough to say, hey, you're a young student, you're interested in this. Do you want to grab coffee? I'd love to give you advice for 30 minutes, And the thing is, if you never ask that person, then you're never going to get that advice. I kind of in my story talked about how I tried and failed certain things, but if you try 10 things and 5 of them work out, then people only remember the 5 things that did work out. So I would just say, if you're scared, if you're shy, just go for it. It's okay if it doesn't work out. You will eventually succeed at something, and then you'll just keep improving from there.
I completely agree with that. The worst they can say is no. So when I was a little kid, I was probably like 5 or 6 before I moved from Turkey to America. My uncle had a little stand in the bazaar, and one day my dad just gave me a sock, and he was like, because my uncle sold big socks, and my dad gave me a sock, and he was like, go sell this. And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna do that. I was so anxious. And so I kind of had to learn from a young age, like, if you want something, you kind of have to go for it. That's just the way to do it. It's not gonna land in your lap. So I tried to sell the sock. People only bought it because I was a little kid, and my dad and uncle probably knew that, so it worked out for them. But whenever you reach out for, you want to improve your career, college, you also need to remember that the shoes that you are in now, someone else was in before. So sometimes it's just about finding the right person to talk to. A lot of people will give you advice. Some people won't give you advice. But to find someone that you share something in common with, whether it's a value, right? Humanitarian values, whether it's a value of wanting to learn, wanting to work in law, whatever it is. What I tried to do was put myself out there in a way where I was confident to say that, hey, I really like law. I was wondering if I could intern with your legal aid office. I know I'm in high school, but I'm really interested in learning. You don't have to pay me. I'll get there on time, whatever. And so none of my gigs in high school were paid. They were all just, I had to be there, suffer through it, take a bunch of debt, whatever. But alhamdulillah, it paid off. And I think, when it comes to Qadr, when you put in the work, Allah knows. So you're going to get rewarded in one way or another. And just having that confidence kind of put my heart at ease, because sometimes you try for something and you really want it, but it doesn't work out, right? But, there's always a reason for that. So with that in mind, I just said, well, I can give it a go. And if it doesn't work out, Allah knows what's going on. Like, I might not know what's going on, but Allah knows what's going on. So that kind of gave me a little bit of comfort. And also it made me proud to do something that I know was improving something, whether it's my school or myself or my family or my community. That's just something that I really liked. Not because of, like people saying good job, but because I could tell myself, hey, good job. Like, you gave it your all today. Even if it didn't work out, you can be proud of yourself. You did your best. And usually whenever you have that attitude, just do your best, be proud. Whenever you think of something, let me take initiative, it works out.
Thank you, sir. And that's actually a perfect segue to go into our second section. So section 1 was a little bit of painting the Tom Brady picture. What does he look like? How well does he throw, etc., right? Now, the second section is about the how. So we go into the workout routine and the Monday through Friday of our And this is a little bit more nuts and bolts. And Saab will come back to you actually. Can you describe for us in as much detail as possible what an average week do you look like? You know, timing wise, when did Monday start, when did Friday, and what were weekends like, how many hours were you doing, etc. Or on it, whatever was your active period as you prepared for college admissions. Because and the reason I come back to you is you were obviously mentioning a lot of things that you were juggling together. School, dual credit, AP classes, fundraising, political engagement at high schools.
So I think that, you know, a lot of us, we dream of doing a lot of things, but whenever we don't have, I'll speak for myself. I want to do a lot of things, right? But if I don't have an action plan for it, it's not going to get done. Sure, I can just trust myself to do it, but I've learned over the past like 8 years that if I trust myself, sometimes just I have to have an actual plan, right? Something I can follow. So I remember 11th grade, which I mentioned was my hardest year in high school. I specifically went on Excel. I did my classes. I knew what I was going to take. I planned out every single hour of my week, starting from, I think it was like starting from Fajr up until like bedtime. So I would say like, okay, these hours I'm allowed to sleep. These hours I'm allowed to do this. But every single day from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., I will work on AP Environmental Science. I don't care if I don't even have any homework. I don't care if I already have all A's. Doesn't matter. I can only tell myself good job if I made a plan, 5 to 6 p.m., AP Environmental Science, and I did it. And I did that for 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8. And also, you know, one thing you have to keep in mind is you know yourself better than everyone else. So if you're the kind of person where you like to work out for an hour, take a break for an hour, then good for you. You can do that. For me, it was more like, let me just work 2 hours, take a little 1 hour break, 2 hours. And those breaks were usually like dinner or if I had to go to soccer practice or something like that. So it was still being productive. I wasn't just sitting down. So my approach was very, very structured. And I did that because I didn't want to get to a point where I was like, oh, I have so much to do. What can I do? Or, oh, I have nothing to do. Let me just do nothing. So that kind of structure definitely helped me. And this also included Saturdays. So on Saturdays, I would go to my masjid and I would, you know, help out, volunteer. That was also included. As a matter of fact, one of my teachers respected that I had this schedule so much that he offered to tutor me for AP statistics because that was something that I thought was difficult. So he was a very hardworking man. And I told him about my schedule and I was like, look, I know this is weird, but I'm only available like 9 p.m. on Thursday. And he was like, okay, just come to my house. And I would go to his house and I would just study AP statistics. And after a while, more people started joining as well. So to have that kind of order structure gains you a lot of respect from people as well. And they're more willing to see, okay, look, this kid actually has discipline. He knows what she knows what they want and they're trying to get it. Let me try to help them out. So the one thing, biggest advantage you guys have going for you is you're young. People like young people, generally speaking, like they want to help them, especially if you show that initiative. So show that initiative, find creative ways to do it. Of course, make dua, and inshallah, it'll work out. But I think that structure definitely helped me.
And just make it, so this is very helpful, make it real for us in terms of hours. Mm-hmm. So how much time were you spending in school? How many hours a week on average were you spending outside of school study? How many hours outside of school were you spending in extracurriculars?
So for every
order of magnitude.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just do like Monday through Sunday. So Monday through Friday, I have school from 8 to 3. And then usually, I'm sure it's similar for you guys, you have like 1 hour of doing a club, right? And sometimes clubs meet twice a week. What I wanted to do, because I was involved with so many things, was like, let's say student council, it would meet, well, student council is not a good example, but let's say liberal arts society, it would meet Mondays and Wednesdays, right? I would let them know, hey, I can only make it on Monday because Wednesday I have something else. And all of this was because I had a structure. So for example, 8 to 3, did my class, then I went to a club. Usually people spend 3 to 5 in one club. I would go to 2 different clubs because I had different interests. Like debate was something that was really interesting to me. So I would give that all my 2 hours, but pretty much everything else, I would just do 1 hour. So like 3 to 4, liberal arts society, 4 to 5, model UN, right? So that gives you 10 different windows to do different organizations and extracurriculars. Now, don't start off doing 10, right? Start off by things that seem interesting to you and see what you can manage. And then, from 5, I would get home, 6, have dinner, pray. Around 7 or whatever, that's when I would do like the studying, like 7 to 8, 8 to 9, 9 to 10. Because I realized if I'm not in school, the one way that I can still improve myself is by studying and, being productive somehow. So that's what I did. I would just study probably every night. I would study like 3 hours if I had like a test, then maybe 4. And sometimes I would have to like reschedule like AP Environmental Science. I can't do it today because I have an exam tomorrow morning in AP Statistics. So I was flexible. I wasn't too harsh on myself. And if I ever made a mistake, then it's like I want to talk to myself as if I'm my friend, right? Like if you tell a friend, oh, you messed up, you're so bad, they're not going to be your friend. So treat yourself the same way. You want yourself to do well, right? So think of it as, well, what can I do to help this friend do well? I can give him a structure. I can tell him, look, Tuesdays after you're done with class, you have soccer practice. You can leave soccer practice a little bit early to do something else. And so that's kind of how I thought about it. People have different approaches, but that really helps me. It also helps me think positively during very stressful times. Instead of talking negatively about my own self, I tend to motivate myself in that way. Saturdays, likewise, like I said, I was volunteering for most of the day. And then Saturday evenings, I would just play soccer with friends. So that was kind of like my outlet. Sunday was grind time. So starting at like 11, okay, 11 to 1, let me work on a subject that I think is hard. And then 1 to like 2, let me study for an exam that I know is coming up. And I just did it in like 1 hour increments. So all the clubs that you're involved in, break them down, break down how much time you think you need to spend, because there's no point in spending 10 hours a week studying for a class that there's no way you're going to have that much work for, right? So you can try to figure out, this class is the most demanding, so I'm going to make sure I study for it, let's say 7 hours a week. And another class like PE, for example, no one studies for PE. So during that time, what I would have studied for PE, I would just study for another class. So I guess all that's to say, just definitely scheduling really helps, and being stringent, but also being kind to yourself.
Terrific, thank you. So that is, call it 4 to 5 hours of work outside of school every day, and then additional work on the weekend. So, Umar, let me come to you. Let's say I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum to Islam, and I am either at the end of middle school or just starting high school, and I don't have that motivation and that energy to do so much more. I'm exhausted by 9:50. How should I think about motivation and creating that energy?
For myself, it was very much about envisioning the future that I wanted. And the vision I had, even when I was 14 years old, was that I wanted to become a doctor. And I sit before you today, and I'm not a doctor. But that was my vision. And the plan that I had was, I knew my family had more modest means. I wanted to go to university with a full scholarship. That was my dream. I thought it was so cool that somebody would pay you to go to college. So that's what I wanted. And I knew that, okay, if I want to be a doctor, if I want to go to college, if I want my college to be paid for, I need to be an excellent, excellent student. And so it was just mathematical. That's the goal. This is a general path. Then the question became, okay, well, how do you plan for success? And at age 14, going out of middle school, going into high school, I wrote a plan on paper of all the classes that I would take, so that at the end of high school, I would be a student who took Spanish all 4 years, who did orchestra for 7 years straight, and had AP classes in multiple domains. And in order to make that work, I had to do PE somewhere. There wasn't enough room in the schedule. So the summer after 8th grade, I went to summer school for gym class. And the summer after 9th grade, I went to summer school for gym class. Now, this happened to be very convenient for a few reasons. It was convenient because I got really sweaty in gym class, and I didn't want to be sweaty in school. I also would never want to take a shower in school. So this was pretty perfect. It also worked out really well because those were early summers. 8th grade summer, 9th grade summer, you're basically a child. But by 11th grade summer, if you're like Isat, you could be working in Congress in Washington, D.C. You could do all types of things. So I knew that those later summers were more valuable. The early summers, were just childhood. And so that was a good time to get some of that stuff done. But it required very advanced planning from the beginning, and it required vision for motivation. That same kind of planning ended up working out, as Isat described, in the day-to-day realm, where you would plan how much you're studying, how much you're doing homework, how much time you're putting in for decompression. I had friends who would joke when they would look at my calendar. They would joke about how, oh, look, he puts 30 minutes TV. And I mean, that's what it was and how it is. And even now, if you look at my calendar for work, it's similar, where every hour is kind of blocked one way or another. 30 minutes of TV, middle of the workday. So all of those things are there. And the motivation is really something that has to kind of come from inside. And if it is there, if there's some desire, be it for achievement of a certain kind, for exploration of a certain kind, I want to go work in London. That would be so exciting. Or, oh, I would love to work in government with the president. That would be exciting. I mean, whatever the wild dream is, dream it wholeheartedly and use that as motivation for then just the very mathematical requirement of getting A's and getting everything done.
Thank you. A couple of questions. So one for you and one for Myra. The first one is, I'm much older than 14 now, and I don't think I can make a 4-year plan for it. So how did you make that 4-year plan? How did you know what to plan for, what to aim for? Did you get any help?
It's always useful to know people who are 5 years older than you. Those people that are 5 years older than you can show you the future, and they can give you very useful coaching. I was blessed to have an older brother who made some of these things clear to me, that, you need to do this and this, you need to get A's, you need to do whatever. And that guidance was invaluable. Aside from him, I was active in my masjid. So I didn't have one bhai, I had a whole fleet of bhais that had all types of good knowledge for me, different perspectives. And, just casually playing basketball, this, that, halakha, you end up learning this or that. So use those people, ask them questions. They want to help you.
Thank you. Myra, on to you. You talked about essays in the earlier part of the discussion. Tell us a little bit about, what does a great essay look like versus what does an okay essay look like, or differentiates the two. And I am a student who hasn't written profusely before. I don't read a lot. I consider myself an average person who turns in essays when my teacher asks me. How do I take myself from here to, in a year, writing, compelling, all this?
Sure. So the application essay is a very important part of your package, because a lot of what you're going to turn in to the admissions committee, it's like a list. You have your transcript, you have your resume, you have the list of whatever extracurriculars you're in, and those are all really important. But the essay, you should think of it as, this is my opportunity. If I had 10 minutes with the admission officer, I have 10 minutes to tell them why I'm such an interesting person and why I would be such a great addition to their class. And so you have to approach it to think, this shouldn't just be repeating what the rest of your application says. It should be something different. It should tell them something different that the rest of your application doesn't say. And so there's so many different ways that you can approach it. But what I thought was really helpful is you want to write about something that you are very passionate about. It's really obvious if you are not interested in what you're writing or talking about. And so for me, I picked a few things, whether it's activities, extracurriculars that you're doing, or even just experiences you've had, right? Like Omar wrote about a trip to Pakistan that has nothing to do with his classes, but it was something that really stuck out to him. So, I would start with making a list of a few different things that just mean a lot to you. A good way to approach it is, if you can talk about this for 30 minutes straight, that means that's something you're excited about. If you list a topic and you have 2 minutes to say something about it and then you don't have anything else, you're probably not interested in that topic and you shouldn't write your essay about it. So start off with those topics, and then within each one, think, what qualities can I highlight? So for example, if there's like, for me, I played sports, sports can show that you're really disciplined, you're really hardworking. In my case, kind of triumphing over an initial failure. Think of like, what are the qualities I can brag about if I write about this topic? And from there, just see like what looks like a good thing. If there are certain activities that you don't think you have a lot to say, then move on to the next one. So that's how I would approach the brainstorming part of picking the topic. And then in terms of the mechanics, leave yourself plenty of time to work on the essay. Don't say you're going to write it in 2 or 3 weeks. A really good application essay is going to take a long time. Start on it this summer, after junior year. Start just brainstorming and writing. Honestly, I had a couple of essays that I wrote that weren't good, and I didn't know they weren't good until I wrote them. And I said, nope, I have to pick another topic. This is not working out. And that's totally normal. So, give yourself that time, like, to brainstorm. Maybe you'll make your initial list, and then a week or 2 later, you'll think of more ideas, and then you'll write out maybe a couple of essays, put it down for a few weeks, come back a few weeks later, read it with fresh eyes, you'll make a lot of revisions. So I would say definitely leave yourself plenty of time. And, in terms of the essay itself, what they always say in English class is show instead of tell. The most boring essay tells the reader what you're trying to say instead of showing it to them. So I've read a bunch of application essays, friends, younger siblings will send them to me. It's extremely boring if you say, here's a cool internship I did, and here's what I got out of it. I am hardworking. I know a lot about other people's perspectives. I work well with others. People will really just explain what they want you to take away. It's boring. And if I'm reading 200 application essays today, I'm not going to remember that list, So show instead of tell. That means pick something interesting that happened, whatever your topic is. What is a conversation that happened? What is an interesting episode that happened? Something that ideally the reader can imagine in their head. You describe it really vividly. It's something interesting. It's something shocking or funny or embarrassing. It can be anything. But, the people reading your essays are very smart. So you don't have to spell it out for them, like, I'm telling you that I'm hardworking. It will be obvious if you tell them a story in your essay. It'll be obvious what qualities you're trying to bring out. So those are the things that I would focus on.
Thank you. You mentioned how great essays come in many flavors. I'm sure you've read hundreds over the last few years. Could you give a few examples of topics that you felt were interesting? Maybe this is something we can tackle, all of us can tackle.
Sure. So, I would, again, approach it from, to be perfectly honest, what you're interested in is interesting. I know I'm repeating myself a bit, but, certain people will mention like a really cool internship at a place that sounds like it's a dream to work there for, but they don't have anything interesting to say. So I think that, if you're trying to brainstorm maybe things that were different from what you might have expected, sometimes that can be a really interesting story. If you've traveled somewhere, but, I know some of us don't get to travel, and that's okay. Maybe in my case, I kind of wrote about a failure. Perhaps it was interesting just because most people are bragging about themselves the whole time. And so, I think just anything that kind of sets you apart, some kind of experience that sticks in your mind, is a good place to start.
So I interview every year a few kids for Harvard, and I get to read their essays. There are some essays that I remember even now, 4 or 5 years later. One of them was a girl from Baytown, and she wrote something that wouldn't come across on her resume. It wouldn't come across in the application. She wrote about the honest struggle in her family. Now, inshallah, nobody has any struggles in their families, but some people do. And hers is something that I still remember because she wrote about it and shared that part of her life. So her father was a gambling addict that caused a lot of issues. She had to overcome them. When she did so, it was for the benefit and out of the motivation of helping her little siblings. And it all came across in this essay that I'm remembering and talking about right now. So things that aren't necessarily in the resume, on the application, that you can share that says something about you, that is what I feel makes a really good essay.
So, in your essay, don't be scared to be dramatic. And I mean that. No matter what it is you're writing about, the way that I thought about it was, hey, if I'm not going to get into this school, then at least the admissions officer will enjoy reading my essay. So I wrote about something that had a lot of drama, and which was my mom. So I wrote about my mom. She's not here to hear this, luckily, but my essay was about how what it was like living with my mom and moving around so much as a kid. And here's why I chose this. But actually, before I tell you why I chose this, the reason your essay is important is because what usually happens is there's this database called the Common App. Did you guys also know? You had the okay. So the Common App it's this database that has a lot of most colleges, and what you do is you write one essay. There are prompts on there. I think there are 5 prompts. One of them is like, tell me about a struggle. Tell me about something you're proud of. Tell me about this and that. So I chose whichever one. I actually wrote essays for all 5 of them because I didn't know which one I wanted to send. But I got to choose whichever one I wrote, and then that got sent to all of the colleges I applied to. So like University of Pennsylvania, Yale, Harvard. And you know what? Some colleges liked it and some didn't. And that's fine, right? Because you're going to fit in wherever you fit in. But the important thing is that you're true to yourself. And if that means writing dramatic stuff about your mom and you, then go for it, right? And another thing is sometimes colleges will not only take your Common App essay, which is your main essay, think of that as kind of like the most fundamental one. They also have smaller essays that they want you to write. So it's like 300 words, and it'll say like, hey, tell me something that you struggled with or something that made you realize that you're different. And then, of course, there are some schools like University of Chicago where it's like, hey, you're trapped in a hotel room with a lighter and an orange peel. How do you escape, right? All of these are trying to get at one thing. Who is this kid? I don't want to just look at their name on a resume and look at how they were the student council. Is this a kid that's actually going to fit into Harvard? Is this a kid who's actually going to succeed or want to connect with people or help others? That's why the essay is so important. It makes you human. So that's why you shouldn't shy away from bringing your true qualities. Like she said, if you can talk about something for 30 minutes, chances are that's probably a key part of who you are, and you want to show that to college. So one more thing that I wanted to bring up that's a little bit unrelated, but whenever I was in middle school and someone had talked to me about college or in high school, I was just like, this is so unattainable. It's not relevant for me. Guys, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, okay? So don't think of going to Harvard as, oh my God, I have to do these things. No. In my case, it was, okay, let me finish 9th grade. Let me get over this injury. Let me apply to start this new club. One step at a time. Don't think Harvard just happens because we all grinded. No, I mean, we just wanted to do something that we liked, which in my case was learning and doing different clubs and all those things. It wasn't, let me get into Harvard. So for me, it was actually 3 stages. 1, adapting to high school, which I spent 9th and 10th grade doing. The second stage was actually pushing myself as much as possible, because it doesn't matter if you come from a rich family or a poor family, if you come from a big school or a small school, they're going to look at how much you pushed yourself in that environment. If you come from a family who doesn't have a lot of means, then they're going to say, okay, this kid did not have a lot of means. Here's what they were able to accomplish with that in mind. So don't think you're at a disadvantage over anything. And the third stage is, how do I actually show the admissions committee that I pushed myself and I did the right things? So that's where the essay really comes into hand.
Thank you. Omar, you talked about being a great student throughout school, and specifically in high school. Let's say I am a student who's about to finish middle school again. I have a lot of potential, I think, but my grades don't reflect that. And listening to this conversation, I feel like I want to change that. And I want to be someone who's top of their class. How do I make that happen very mechanically, very actively?
Like Esat said, you eat the elephant one bite at a time. So the if you have a vision, you can do it, and you do it 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 week at a time. So you go to your class, you pay attention. There's a student near you who would be distracting, you ignore that and focus. Your teacher assigns you 10 math problems, you do those 10 math problems. And every time you just push and push and push, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 week at a time. And I think what will happen is once you have a week under your belt, 2 weeks under your belt, you will see that, yes, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And then you just keep going, inshallah, and find more and more.
Thank you. So this was the second part of our discussion, which was one layer deeper and looking at admissions, academics, extracurriculars, essays. Let's talk about the funding piece now. Asad, I know you've gone through this most recently and wanted to share some tips with the community here.
Okay, so when it comes to funding, funding in high school and also funding in college, right? A lot of people at Harvard went to these programs where I think one of them was like the Yale Global Scholars, very prestigious programs, but it's like $8,000 for like a week or something. So with my family's means, those kinds of programs were not available to me. So I just looked for ones that were affordable. I just searched up like the military academy, West Point, Naval Academy. They all have programs where they pay for everything. Now, I don't want a career in the military, but what I did know is that there are some good things about the military. There's discipline, there's organization, right? You get to have a personality, you're more outstanding. And so I wanted to take advantage of that. And also I thought it was pretty cool that they flew you out and you got to go to the mountains and a bunch of stuff. For those who are interested, they still do this. Junior summer, Military Academy and the Naval Academy have these 2-week-long programs, and the people that I met at those kinds of programs are all in very good colleges. So my point is, whether you do the Yale Global Scholars, which is $8,000, or you do the Military Academy, which is free, you're going to meet very great people, and there are options available. Now, when it comes to college, obviously it's no secret that college in America is incredibly expensive. The good thing about applying to places like Harvard and Ivy Leagues is that if they want you to go to their school, then they will make you come to their school. If money is a problem, don't worry about it. Like if money is actually a problem, like you can't pay $70,000 a year, which like I couldn't, then they were like, well, we'll give you a scholarship. Now that applies to the best of the best schools. So in a weird way, if you go to schools that aren't top, you actually might end up paying more because they have less money, so they have less money to give to students. So if you have less money available from your family, in my opinion, that should motivate you even more to target the top ones because you're probably going to get a free education or a very reduced education. With that said, Omar had to work through high school and middle school. I had to work through college. Working while studying is an option, especially in college. It's something that can actually count as a credit. So my point is, if you have financial burdens that you think will continue in college, the school will, at least Harvard, will try to make that as easy as possible. They will try to give you credits for it, or they'll give you something very prestigious, like I get to research with a professor at Harvard Business School, right? It goes on my resume and I make some money off of it. So if you have any doubts about how you're going to afford Harvard or, the top schools, I would say don't, because they try to do a very good job of making sure that it's never a problem. If you're a kid that deserves to be at Harvard, then money should not be a problem. And that's why they always ask alumni for lots and lots of money. I'm fresh alumni, so don't ask me about that, but I'm sure they can speak about it.
Yeah, they ask for a lot of money. And, so my family had more modest means. I went to school at a time when Harvard's policy on this was less clear-cut. Today, it is amazing. If your family makes under $100,000 a year, it is free tuition, no cost. The hard part is getting in. But if you get in, inshallah, you will go. Now, when I went, we had 80% scholarship. And so I feel eternally grateful to Allah and beyond that also to Harvard for paying 80%. And now as a grown-up, I contribute every year to Harvard University to try to pay them back in a way by paying them forward. So my contributions go towards promising students, inshallah, hopefully here in this room. So that's a thing that we do very much. Harvard, Stanford, both have these programs. If you look at other schools, you can Google it. There's lots of schools like this. The thing to caution you about is, like Isat said, there's schools that are in the middle, still in the top 20 or 25 by the rankings, but schools like NYU or Georgetown, big brand name, oh, it's far away from Houston, so I want to go there. Those schools are going to charge you a lot of money, and they do not have the type of financial aid that you would get if you got into a Stanford or a Harvard. I mean, so my general view is you should either go to the top if you can, or if you have infinite resources, then go wherever you want. But if you're of a more modest means, go top or go local. And you can go to UT or go to University of Houston and do very, very well. I have friends who specifically went to University of Houston, were among the top few students at that school, and then went to Harvard for graduate school. So the different pathways exist.
Just one other point on finances, not necessarily paying for college, but just in terms of if you're in high school, I know that, some people, their parents can hire fancy private tutors and they go to all these academies and stuff. If you're struggling in your classes, I never had a private tutor. If I ever made below a 90 on an assignment, I would go to school 30 minutes early the next morning and bother my teacher and ask them, what do I need to do to turn this assignment into an A? And I didn't wait until I did bad on an exam. I did that for every single assignment that was graded. And so, I just wanted to share that because in terms of tutoring and all those other expensive programs that some of your classmates might have, you don't necessarily need those. You can just draw on the resources you have at school.
One thing that I'm just realizing, we didn't touch on more depth in extracurriculars. Any advice for the audience there, maybe Myra, you can go first, on deciding sort of what you want to pick. I think you talked about that in terms of track a little bit. But then, how do you balance doing well in that with academics? Again, from a very mechanical practical perspective, how you balance your time, etc.
Sure. So I think, I think, let's see, orchestra, track, soccer, in terms of just the mechanical list, you want to have at least one of those extracurriculars that has an everyday practice. So that's usually either a sport or like band or orchestra, I think debate. So you want to have one of those kind of like major, very time consuming extracurriculars, and then hopefully a few others as well. In terms of the few others, it could be so many things. For me, I joined a few different clubs and ran for office. So typically from sophomore or junior year onwards, I was an officer. And then I also did volunteering outside of that. And so...
That's interesting. What's the role of the few others? I thought you pick one, go easily to that, do really well plus academics. But explain to us a little bit the rationale for...
Absolutely. So, I mean, they want you to just be really well-rounded. I mean, honestly, it looks more impressive if you're in 4 extra things than just 1 extra thing. And so because the thing about balance is it's a lot easier to balance things when you really enjoy them. And so that's why I picked things that I enjoyed. And, the nice thing about all these clubs that you'll join in school is you make friends out of them. So I actually enjoyed going to these things. I'd have my class, like my normal school day, and then about an hour and a half of track or cross-country practice after school. And then, sometimes the clubs would meet. And so I made a lot of friends that way. And then, those can kind of be a study break, right? You have, as Isat mentioned, you have like 3 to 4 hours of studying. When you're at these clubs, you get to talk to your friends, you hang out. It's a lot of fun to plan different projects and have events. And then you can go back to studying afterwards. And, I did a lot of volunteering. And so a lot of times that was on the weekend. So that was kind of nice. It wasn't after school. It'd be Saturday morning. Most of the time I'd have some kind of volunteering project for one of the clubs I was in. So, I think, unfortunately, you do have to do a lot of things to stand out, when you're applying to these schools. But, just try to take it one thing at a time. And your grades are very important. And so if your grades are starting to slip, maybe be a little bit less involved in some of these organizations. It's great and it's ideal if you are an officer and if you're super active. But, if that means you're going to start making B's and C's in your classes, then that's not good. And so, try to balance things, take breaks when you feel like you need them, get help when you need help. But do prioritize your classes and your grades because that's the foundation of your application and, exam scores as well, like SAT and that kind of thing.
Terrific, thank you. So we have about 15 minutes left. We'll open it to the audience now for questions. We'll take one from the gents and one from the ladies. I can come around with the mic and just if you can raise your hand, I'll come to you with the mic. And then we can have our audience, our panelists answer. One request as you think of and ask questions is, I think about 80 of us here, there's probably more joining remotely. It would be awesome if we can think of questions that are relatively broad in nature, in the sense that they're not very specific to your profile. Or if they are specific to your profile, if you feel like that question can still benefit more people, then that would be.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah reward you for what you have said, and may Allah make those young men and women benefit from what have been said. What I see that, mashallah, there is a lot of discipline and determination behind your success, and may Allah Azza wa Jal keep blessing you with that. But what is your advice when there is a lot of distraction around, like specifically social media and a lot of things? So in regards to time management, what is your advice to those high schooler and even those who still in lower grade?
Well, what I would offer on time management is that it's okay to play PlayStation. It's okay to social media, right? The balance of what's normal. But just to limit the time. Anything can become a problem if it's too much time. Everything needs to be in balance. For myself, I would have halaqah on Saturday morning. I would get in masjid with my friends for that. But in all honesty, I wasn't at the masjid every day for 3 or 4 hours. I would watch some TV, but I wasn't watching 4 or 5 hours a day. I would play PlayStation, but I was not playing that much PlayStation. So it's really just about moderation in all things in pursuit of the larger objectives. And the root of all of that is going to be vision. The vision is what has to be there. If someone sees a goal that they really want to go after, then inshallah that would motivate them to balance the time that they have.
Okay, so completely agree with Omar. And I also wanted to add that, generally, whenever I thought about wanting to take a break through watching TV or whatever, there were a few options, but at the end of the day, the goal was to distract myself, just chill out. So you can do that through a variety of different ways. You can do that through TV and PlayStation if that's your thing, or you can try to do it through other ways, maybe reading a book, maybe through prayer, maybe through meditation, because at the end of the day, those kind of give you the same goals. I actually remember in high school, probably a mistake, but I wanted to stop distracting myself, so I brought up to my friends that maybe I should get a flip phone, and that led to them calling me grandpa for all of high school. But I'm still kind of thinking about it. Like, if you get distracted easily, how do you solve that? You have to remove those distractions. Like, you mentioned that we're disciplined. I think for me, because I know that I can be so easily distracted and undisciplined, I take away those things at the core. So, like, I had an Xbox, but my parents didn't let me play it. It's like, what's the point, right? we wouldn't really watch TV. I would kind of just read. I would play a lot of soccer. And at the end of the day, I knew the goal was I just have to stop thinking about school. And also, you know, prayer does affect a lot of people. In my case, it certainly did. Whether it's going to the masjid or honestly just staying up at night and just praying, that definitely helps. You know, you get a lot of anxiety, you get a lot of fear and depression. So trusting God has certainly worked, and I mean, His door's always open. So that's a little bit of what we do.
Oh, it's on. How did how did you know what you wanted to do, like your major? Because I know, like you mentioned, you had like interests like track and extracurriculars in high school. But then, how did you like come to choose a major and decide that you wanted to go to law school or pursue the job that you wanted?
Sure. So, it's okay to not know what you want to do. Most people don't. So don't freak out as the first step. Even in high school, you'll notice which classes you enjoy more than others. So personally, it's not surprising. I'm a lawyer. I always liked reading and writing, English and history, a lot of that stuff. I thought math was fine, but it wasn't my favorite. And so just knowing that about myself going into college, I found really helpful. I think later in high school, you have a lot more choices with your electives. So I took like art history, just very liberal arts heavy classes. That's what I enjoyed. And then, I don't want to get too much into college because, we're focusing on admissions, but just to answer the question, just taking classes that seem interesting. That sounds very basic, but, college, your curriculum is a lot less structured than high school where you have like your main core curriculum classes and just seeing what you're interested in, talking to lots of people. I didn't have any lawyers in my family, so I didn't have, I knew a lot about how to get into med school because I'm Desi, but I didn't know anything about law school. So I talked to a lot of people. We talked about internships. Like, people love when you offer to do things for free. So, get on Google and whatever you're interested in, are you interested in soup kitchens? Are you interested in, I don't know, like the foster care system, or, are you just in art? Look up what your local organizations are and offer to volunteer for a month for free. A lot of that stuff can help you meet people that are in fields that you otherwise wouldn't meet. You can ask them, what's your favorite part of your job, least favorite part of your job, and you can learn more about it that way. And in my experience, I've never had someone say, I don't want you to give me 20 hours of your time for free every week. So definitely take advantage of that, especially if you're doing nothing over the summer. You have like 3 months off, spend a month volunteering somewhere. And if you know you don't like it, that's a really useful thing to know. So it's not a waste of time if you do something and you know that you don't like it, because then you can just cross that off the list and keep looking.
Okay, I guess I will go. So you guys mentioned a lot about which courses look good on your application for college, but I want to know which courses would you say that they were really beneficial for college, like speech, for example, or debate. I think someone mentioned debate. Or which courses would you say that are actually not only look good, but they are actually beneficial throughout college?
In my experience, the things that were really beneficial in college was learning to write, practicing writing. Writing, for me, was one of the most difficult things to do in high school. It was easy for me to do math, problems, stuff like that, but writing was a challenge. And when I forced myself to apply myself, to come up with a process for myself to do that, that was something that helped me in college. Because the more you're ready for that, it's coming in college. They're going to expect it. They're going to expect it at a high level. So if you prepare yourself by learning it well in high school, it very much helps. The other thing I would point to is AP classes. AP classes are rigorous at a level unlike the things you do in 9th grade or 8th grade. If you can take AP classes, learn how to learn at that pace, learn how to really teach yourself at that pace, that's a lot of what's going to happen in college. So the more students do things like that, I think they'll be a step ahead and ready for the very rough transition. I mean, the first semester of college, maybe I don't know if I'm speaking only for myself, it is very different and very difficult. You have such independence and freedom. So if you are already able to teach yourself things and to stay on top of yourself, to manage yourself, you have a big advantage.
That's all great advice. And I also wanted to add, just like you said, speech and debate was monumental for my personal development and also for my college application, because it allowed me to structure my thoughts much better. It also gave me the discipline and the confidence to be able to speak in front of people and properly express how I'm feeling or what I want them to know. And so when I was a little kid, my parents would always say, your voice is so loud, when you argue, even if you're right, people won't side with you because you sound aggressive, you sound mean, it's not good. So I was like, okay, well, watch me get into debate, where that's actually an advantage for me. So my challenge to you all is, if you find that you really like to do something, find a way to use that to your advantage. For me, I like to argue about things, I like to discuss things, so I did speech and debate. And it was incredible. It gave me some of the writing skills that Omar said is incredibly important. It also allowed me to connect with people more. It allowed me to structure my arguments and thoughts, which was crucial for college as well, and also beyond. So speech and debate is what I would definitely encourage you to do, and also volunteering activities. Even if colleges don't like it, hey, I mean, I'm sure Allah will appreciate it, right? So it doesn't really voice.
Assalamu alaikum. I could ask, Jazakallah for it's very beneficial. So I'm asking a question on behalf of as a parent. I mean, coming from an environment where we have a very straight way to get to a best school back in our home country, right? One thing as a parent of a high schooler and middle schooler, kind of my case, struggling, what is the right formula as a parent or as a kid to see, okay, if I do this, 3, 4, 5 things, I'm kind of into that 75% of Ivy Leagues, right? Or can we get more chances to get into the school? So based on your experience or have you been into those schools, is there any like a high percent, if you do a couple of these things, right, you're in a good shape to get into those most chances based on academic also, you have to have a good academic record. So is there anything that you can enlighten us on this path?
So the question is, from the perspective of a parent, is there sort of a formula of things that you can more or less guide yourself if you're a high school student, or the parent of a high school student? That you can guide that gives you high probability of placing yourself in a competitive position. And I think, I'm a parent of 2 young children at the very beginning of their educational journeys. When I step back and look at my cohort, my classmates, they're now 20 years out from high school, I see a wide spectrum of outcomes. There are some who are no longer on this earth. There are some who have spent time behind bars. There are some who are doing menial work. And then there are some who are complete success in every dimension: family life, professional life, etc. The common thread that I see is AP classes. If kids were in AP classes in high school, 20 years later, they are successful. Now, not all of those kids went to great universities immediately. Some of them went to local schools and then went to good graduate schools. Others didn't go to graduate school, but they got a job and then they were quickly promoted. Others ended up doing something a little more remarkable, that they started a company, they're entrepreneurs. Others applied for patents. Others are published authors. Others have traveled the world and worked with the State Department or some other prestigious organization. So there's all of these formulas in the end of what great success looks like. The common thread tends to be being in AP classes. So for my own children, as much as I would love for them to go to Harvard, walk in the places that I walked in at a young age, I want them to go to AP classes, have good peers, and then inshallah, what happens happens, and then inshallah it'll be good. The general formula we've talked about all evening is extracurriculars, academics, and then presenting your personal attributes in a very strong way. Yes? So the question is about the SAT. How heavily weighted is the SAT? My general perception, please let me know if you differ in your perception, is that the SAT is diminishing in its schools. Schools like Harvard, especially in this post-COVID time, are not even making it a requirement. That being said, I think it's an opportunity. If you've gone to a school that was less competitive, or if you didn't get the exact grades that you think reflect your true academic prowess, the SAT, the ACT, these are places for you to put in some effort and inshallah see good results. I can tell you, we can be transparent about scores and stuff. I scored a 34 on my ACT, which was very good, and I scored a 1460 on my SAT, which was good. I had classmates at Harvard who were all 1,500 plus on SATs. I had a classmate who was 1,600. I had a classmate in high school who had a perfect ACT score, 36. Didn't get into an Ivy League school. So this is not at all a defining factor, but it's one piece of like a portfolio. So I would just take it as an opportunity.
Yeah, I really agree with Omar on this. Yeah. I'm going to say something that I wish someone would say if I were in your shoes. The SAT, they say it's not a requirement, but for your purposes, it is a requirement. Treat it as if you have to do it. SAT and ACT, they're both pretty much interchangeable. I think you should definitely do it. And here's why. If you don't score well, you don't have to send your scores, right? But if you do, then it's going to make you look good. So, like Omar said, it's just a part of your application, but it can really help your chances. My scores were as high as this actually, so don't worry about getting a specific score as well. I met people just like you said who score perfect tracks. And one reason maybe that it's diminishing lately and why it's not as important as it used to be. When I first got into Harvard, they accepted me for the candidate visit weekend, or it was called visit. So I just went there for a weekend and stayed with a college student. And I was talking to another person who got in from Houston, and we were talking about test scores. And he goes, "Oh, like, what did you get?" And I told him I took it like 3 or 4 times because I wanted to get a score. And I asked him, "What did you get?" And he was like, "Oh, I got a full 36. I was like, "How many times did you try to get it once?" I was like, "How?" And he's like, "Oh, my dad sent me to this camp where it was run by people that organized the exam." So my point is, whenever you submit your application, your income level, your parents' income level, really affects how they perceive a lot of things. I didn't even know this chance like that existed, right? This kid, and by the way, when I say this kid, his dad is literally like, everyone in this room will know him. So there are those opportunities for those kids. So you're not really competing with, like, don't feel the pressure of, oh, I have to get 36, otherwise I'm not gonna make it. Just make sure you are able to convey, like, hey, I do all this school stuff and extracurriculars and socials, but I'm also able to like sit down, put my head down, and study for a test that I know I need to achieve what I want.
So I'm curious, like, what was your like ranking in high school, like when you graduated? Y'all's ranking.
Ranking in high school, like, I'm afraid we're running up close to the Maghrib Azan time, so this will be the last question that we take.
I was ranked number 1, but we had a giant school, so I was tied for number 1 with a bunch of other kids.
At my school, if you did athletics, it lowered your GPA, so I was number 3, even though I remained B just as I did track. But if I hadn't done track, I wouldn't have gotten into these schools, think holistically.
I was also ranked number 3. I don't really have any excuse. Just took all the classes I could, and literally like number 1 and 2 were like 0.0005 GPA points higher. Yeah, just make sure you're in the top 10 if possible. Can I share one opportunity with them? So, guys, I mentioned some of these projects that I like to work on. That, like I said, is kind of an escape for me. So one project that I'm working on right now is a fellowship, and it's designed for high schoolers who are interested in public service and business. And the fellowship it gives you a few $100 as a scholarship. It also pairs you with a mentor from Harvard or one of the Ivy League universities. And it's also a week-long curriculum that I read along with others about things that the schools don't cover, like what is investing, what is a resume, how to network, those things. It's called the BIAR Fellowship. If you Google it, you can find it. This is our second year of doing it. I want to share it with you guys. If you're interested, feel free to apply. You literally just write like a 500-word essay. It's like a page or something. And it's if you're interested in public service or entrepreneurship and business. Yes, it's BIAR Fellowship, B as in boy, A-Y-A-R. That's my last name. Yeah. I wasn't on the poster. Wasn't popular enough, but BIAR Fellowship. And you can also feel free to ask me questions. I'll be here for a minute.
If there's anything to take away, I hope that you should just figure out what you're really interested in and try to do really, really well at those things. Of course, I think anyone coming in here, before we said anything new, that you have to get really good grades, good test scores. But for everything else, just focus on your interests and your passions and try to pursue those. And that'll help you not just get into a really good school, but that'll set you up for success. If you don't get into Harvard, it's okay. You can still be incredibly successful and do really well at whatever you try to do. And so a lot of the things that we've told you to do today, even if you don't ultimately get into Harvard or Yale, you will do very well wherever you end up, inshallah. And I sincerely mean that. If you are really hardworking, if you always take initiative, you always ask people for help, and you always try to push yourself, then you're going to succeed no matter what college you go to.
After I got my admission letter, I read about a study. This study tracked, and it asked the question, do the people who get into these elite schools, do they go on and are they the most successful? And when it tracked cohorts of people, what the people who did the study found, they found that in fact, the people who are most successful are the people who apply to these schools. The reason that I have survived in my 20 years now reflecting on this is that the people who apply have three things. They have a vision for themselves, where they can see something really good. They have the hard work that it takes to actually put in the effort, be disciplined, and make something happen. And they have the guts to try. The guts to try. To be willing to fail. Because the worst that could happen is no. So if you have these three things, you will be the type of person who applies, and inshallah, all other good things will come over time.
Omar, Myra, Isaac, thank you so much. This has been one of the
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.